Welcome. This is Minding the Gap, episode 2, and I'm Bob Curtis, and this is my son, Dylan Curtis.
How's it going?
And we are going to be speaking with Michael Chiltern of Wolf and Warrior Brewery in White Plains, New York. It's 195 East Post Road in Westchester County. And I knew Michael from TV production, which, how long were you in that?
Well, it's hard to say, Bob. You know, I got an internship at a little show called Reading Rainbow back in 1999.
LeVar Burton was
Yeah, LeVar Burton. I used to have to drive him around. not much at production yet in my career at that point, but
Right.
yeah. So 99, and I got done with that and launched the Wolf and Warrior. Officially, we opened our doors for business January 24th, 2019. So a 20-year career, right on the nose.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was the like impetus to go from TV production to brewing?
The main impetus for me or driving factor was about 8 years ago. I was about to become a father. My wife was pregnant with our first child, whose name coincidentally means wolf in English. My other son's name is Branko. The first boy's name is Vuk.
Yeah.
And that means wolf. My wife is from Serbia. They have Serbian names.
Right.
Branko, or Branko, if you roll the R, means defender. So I loosely adapted that to warrior. So that's how you get wolf and warrior.
Very cool.
Nice.
But rewind back to the switch from or the first dive into home brewing. I was looking for a hobby to do in an apartment in Astoria, Queens, with a young child, like a baby, that you can't really do much for many months until, you know, the baby's getting older, right? So I was like, okay, let me try brewing beer. I always loved beer. I really got into good quality beer, different beers, international beers, different styles of beer. When I was in Zimbabwe, Africa, as a study abroad student in college. And so I was drinking, you know, Belgian beers and British beers, a lot of British beers in Zimbabwe, and also the African opaque beer,
Right.
which looks a lot like dirty chocolate milk. And it's made from sorghum. I got really into beer as how it pertains to culture and society and how it brings people together. In Zimbabwe, business is done over, they say, a pot of beer.
Yeah.
So they literally have this clay pot, and they hand it around while they negotiate stuff and do business.
Right.
So I brewed the first beer when Vuk was about to be born, served it at his baby shower. It was a West Coast IPA. The recipe was called Hopped and Screwed, and everybody loved it. I thought it was amazing. It really was. It did turn out great. And I was hooked, and I just started brewing every month. And then every month turned into every other week I'd brew a new beer. And then I started competing in homebrew competitions. And the very first competition I entered, I got third place. So I was like,
Nice.
all right, let me just keep at it.
Was that a local competition or national? Or?
Yeah, that one was local. That was the New York City Homebrewers Guild competition called Homebrew Alley. It took place not far from where where our apartment was in Astoria. And so I entered one of my IPAs, because that's all I made in the beginning,
Right.
into the American IPA category, which was like the most heavily contested category. There were 76 entries, and I got third place. So I was like, and that was my first competition.
Right.
So I was like, okay, this is cool. I mean,
That's
like,
great.
beat out most of the field. And then I just entered many, many more competitions. I would drive to breweries in Connecticut and Long Island, wherever the judging was held. Usually it's held at a brewery. And I would almost always, except for twice, hear my name called to get up and get a ribbon or a medal.
Wow.
So that's where it
So
started.
you had the touch.
Yes, I guess I did.
Well,
You
did
know,
you
I
have-
do.
That's lucky because like I've made an attempt at homebrewing like twice, and both times it was fantastically horrible.
Oh man.
Like,
When did you do that? When you were like, how old were you when you did that?
oh, I must have been. I guess I was like.
Don't tell me you were like 13. please.
No. I was like 21, 22 years
okay,
old.
good. Yeah,
and
you
it was like, finally had an actual job and more money than sense for living at home. And I was like, oh, I'll get into like brewing beer. That's awesome. So, I'd like go out, buy a kit.
Yep.
And I think it was probably just like, I swear I cleaned the crap out of everything. And every time, both times, it was like everything's finished, crack one, take a drink. I'm like, wow, that's really, oh my God, that's awful. Like, it's just like the finish was just such trash.
Is it sour tasting or metallic, or it tastes like a Band-Aid, kind of like an antiseptic?
No, it wasn't antiseptic. It just had, I can't, obviously this is a long time ago. I can't quite remember just what it was, but it was just like not a smooth finish to it at all. And like, if it like, had a good sour, so
Yeah.
it's controlled. This
Well,
was
you're-
just like rampantly awful.
Your sense of taste, though, is
Oh no, I gave it to other people. They said it was terrible
Oh
too.
no, yeah, because he's got a nose like a bloodhound. I mean, he would not get near food for like 20 years. I mean, it was all pasta because his nose was so good.
it's like the
I
greatest
couldn't
food
even get
ever
him to feed
anyways.
the dog because the dog food would make
Dog
him sick.
food stinks. Yeah.
Well, no, the dry dog food, not the
does.
canned stuff, the dry stuff. So let me ask you. So how old is your first? This is your first son?
Well, I have two boys,
Right.
but so Vuk, the one whose baby shower we served the beer at,
Yeah.
he's going to be 8 years old in April.
So is this about the time where the craft beers really started to?
Yeah.
So when and what was the tipping point? Because I mean, we've always had bars,
Right.
and I want to ask you more about that. But what was the tipping point?
I mean, for craft beer to kind of make its appearance solidified.
And so suddenly. it seemed
Yeah.
like.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, the timing of it, I think you're right. Like right around 2010 to 2012, craft beer just hit a new level. A lot of the breweries in the New York area, and also in the Northeast around Boston, like Treehouse, Trillium. You go up to Vermont, of course, there's The Alchemist, Heady Topper, legendary.
Yeah.
Other half, Single Cut in the city. Breweries like that were really, really hitting their stride at that time. And I also think beer, especially good craft beer, is a very accessible luxury item. For example, wine took off big time in the mid-'80s, but it was always there.
Right. Yeah.
People always who knew good wine, they would seek it out. But it really became more accessible as wineries in Napa and France and Italy started, being able to get their wine into the consumer's hands more readily. And you didn't have to join a wine club in Napa to get good wine, good Californian wine.
Right.
Beer is even more accessible, I feel, because let's say you want to buy a really good bottle of wine, maybe something that's like, above $30 a bottle, right? And there's 4 or 5 glasses in that bottle, and you're done with it, and it's over. For beer, you can, if you're into flavor and aroma and, appearance and just the whole gestalt, if I may, of beer, you can have a can, you get a 4-pack for, really good beer. 4-pack you can have for like $14, $13 of the 16 ounce, the big cans.
Yeah.
Not 12
Shameless
ounce.
plug
Yeah.
right there. Go for
So, so yes, for $20, one can have Beskar Steel, but we're almost sold out, so now it's priceless. But yeah, we'll make it again
For the holidays.
So I think it's an approachable item of a premium quality and at a price that most people can afford, that as like, I don't want to call it a habit, but like they can enjoy once a week. They can pick up a new pack of beer and try it and enjoy it. And now there's also these apps where you can rate the beer. There's one called Untapped that's very popular.
Really?
Yeah, like I know people that have rated over 5,000 beers.
Wow.
My beers
So
are on
really-
there. The Wolf and Warrior beers are on there on Untapped. We put all of our beers on Untapped for people to check them in, rate them, and it's on a 5-star scale. So our brewery's average is 3.85. We're almost at 4 out of 5 stars. So I'm pretty proud of that. I can't wait to get ahead and go over 4 stars.
Yeah, man.
A lot of our beers now are rating that way. But in the beginning, we had a couple that kind of maybe missed the mark with some consumers. But very infrequently. Most people, once in a while, also with anything, you get a hater.
Oh yeah, of course.
They'll think that all IPAs are supposed to be hazy juice bombs with no bitterness.
Right.
Not true. In fact, IPAs are supposed to be bitter. The New England IPA is not.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we'd make IPAs that were of the traditional or West Coast style. They're called right. The bitterness. They have a lot of hot bite. And they're not hazy. They're clear. And people would rate them poorly and be like, oh, this is so bitter. It's like, well, dude, it doesn't say New England IPA. It says American IPA. So learn your lore.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
But all in all, I couldn't be happier. We're almost 2 years in, and we survived COVID so far. And we're canning our beer after only a year and a half of being open.
That's a big deal. The canning line's that's not insignificant.
And you're doing all the canning right there on site.
Yes, so we have our own canning machine. We actually can, and this is why I did this, is because during the height of the pandemic, we were reduced to curbside only and to-go sales. So made no sense to package things in kegs and have it on draft if no one could sit at the bar drinking it. So we were making crowlers and filling growlers. This is a growler, right? So people would bring them in, but a lot of people just want cans, because it's just so much easier.
Right.
And they're in and out a lot faster, too. So if they're worried about whatever, COVID, and they could just, call in their order, we'll literally run cans out to the car. That's what we used to do.
Yeah.
Now I want people to come inside, just wear their mask.
Yeah.
But and stay 6 feet apart. But in all honesty, so pivoting to the canning runs, the canning machine was essential, really.
Yeah.
So I could can half a fermenter and keg the rest.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah, I saw your canning machine. You had it on. You had a little thing on Instagram the other day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like to put toys on there, too. I put Boba Fett on there to watch the best Castile get cans. Yeah.
Right.
It's got to approve.
Well, let me circle back for a second. So you had early success. You were getting ribbons, and your name was getting called on these things. So what was it you think that you brought to it that contributed to that early?
For me, I think it's really comes down to passion, and also being relentless with what you're going for and doing your research, doing your homework, learning about the hops, learning about how different hops play well together to create a new aroma that neither hop by itself has.
Right.
How the hops interact. And I'm speaking of hops because they're the signature ingredient in IPAs, and that's what I love to make. And most of the time, if I'm going to have a beer, it's going to be an IPA or a really crispy, nice lager. But so anyway, I'm just so dedicated to it. I just love to experiment, and I also love to take care to do the craft well. And that's something with beer. You have to be relentless with your cleaning. Not saying that's what happened to your beer, but I don't know.
I'm assuming it. Man.
I want to taste it now to see if I could discern what it was, but. You have to be relentless. You have to be super detail-oriented. When I was little, I always used to like to put together models, really complicated ones, beyond the age my age was this, and the age on the box at ages 6 and up, and I'm like 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or a little older, but
that's kind of what you were.
Yeah, so you have this passion to get into it, to get down and be at the granular level, finding out how this thing is going to get put together. Beers are similar in that you start to build them. And you have your ingredients. That's kind of your quiver, right, for your different arrows. And I mean, you're basically shooting for a style and a flavor and an experience when you drink it, and also some emotions too. Like when I smell a really nice, well put together IPA, I like to smell a good amount of tropical fruit, citrus fruit, definitely, absolutely pine, resin. So it's almost like, dankness, like that smell you get in a forest after it's just rained.
It's almost like musty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. It's like a very sensual experience almost.
It can be, I mean, and then, if you have, a significant other or beautiful lady or guy or whoever you are with,
And they're into it.
And they're into it, and it's all love.
That's what I wanted to say. Like, I mean, I remember, obviously, my drinking history is not as long as either of yours, but like there was a point where IPAs were never a thing, even in the bars, and it might be one, and it was nothing. Everything was lagers and pilsners and mass produced, obviously, your Bud Light, Budweiser, Miller, what have you. And it really kind of the tides turned, and it seems like that was all kind of driven by the microbreweries and the advent of that. But this has been my gripe, is that there's a point where it's too far. Have you found it where you've just tasted some kind of IPA and you're like, wow, what were you going for here? Just to blow my head off, or,
Yeah, I mean, well, it's definitely, it's kind of a point where it's almost like the arms race, I want to say. I don't want to bring we're not talking about war and politics and all that, but it is in a sense like that because, every brewery is not trying to one up one another, but they invariably see, oh, this brewery's doing this, and they're using this now in their ingredient in their recipes or whatever. Let me try that. Or a lot of breweries and a lot of New England IPAs out there have lactose, milk sugar.
Yeah.
But how can you achieve that pillowy, soft, kind of creamy mouthfeel texture without the lactose? So one thing that we do is we use a lot of malted oats. So there are flaked oats, which look like, Quaker oats for your breakfast. And then there's malted oats, which have been malted, kilned, and dried like barley, but they're oats. And so they really actually just contribute such a silky smooth mouthfeel to a New England IPA that you can, if you do it right, you might not have to use any lactose to achieve that kind of feeling.
Right.
And that's, I think, also a feeling that a lot of people chase when they chase IPAs, is that it feels almost like you're drinking juice, but you're not. It's beer, it's carbonated, it has alcohol, it doesn't taste like juice, but there's a lot of vibes of juice and fruit in there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is an oversaturation to a degree. At this point, I think I see the industry shifting back towards lagers. So lagers and pilsners, really, they call the term in the industry now, or whatever, in craft beer circles, is crispy.
Yeah.
Crispy beers.
Yeah.
Really crisp, nice, snappy. There's even a hashtag called Crispy Boys.
That's the classic, gonna get a bunch of Crispy Boys. It's like your Bud Lights.
Yeah. And so, or there's Juice Boys, or Haze Boys as they're called. But anyway, I think it's a good thing to have this much competition because it makes for some really amazing beers to be had. But
it keeps you stoked too.
It does, yeah.
So are these recipes top secret, or you just can taste it?
What's interesting is we put we don't put the actual recipe on every can, but I do put most of the ingredients on every can. For example, if we take the Beskar Steel, right? So this is our most recent New England IPA that we've canned. And it coincided right in time with season 2 of The Mandalorian, which was awesome. And I am a Star Wars fan, hence the Empire Strikes Back style font.
Love it.
And when you own a brewery, and you're the man, you can do what you want. And so here it is.
Yeah, it is. That's great.
But on here, if you look at the hops that Mando is holding, Simcoe, Sultana, Mosaic, Nelson, Sauvin, Galaxy, and Citra. So there's 6 different kind of hops in this one beer.
Wow.
And that's because these hops combine in different ways that kind of layer in different flavors.
Right. So if somebody wanted to copy that or outdo you, they know where to start.
They know where to start as far as hops go, and a lot of our other cans, we also put the malts and the grains in there too, and any adjuncts we might use like sugar or cacao nibs or Madagascar vanilla beans. We use all of those in stouts mostly, but they could, but I will never, ever, ever, ever say one thing that is crucial, and that's what yeast strain we're using.
Right.
So the yeast really does give. Also, they don't know what temperatures we ferment at, how long we have the hops in. Do we add them in the boil? Do we add them in the whirlpool? Do we not add them at all until dry hop?
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways you can tweak a recipe, and two brewers can start with exactly the same ingredients and wind up with very different beers.
Yeah, you'd end up with one like mine and one like yours.
Man, I gotta help you correct that. You gotta come down for a brew session when
I'd be
pandemic's
so down.
over.
Oh yeah,
So
that would
down.
be fun. Well, so I want to go back. Or I love these kind of stories about how things get started. So you really weren't into any kind of self brewery at all until you just came up with the idea. I need to do something with my son. Did you do any kind of cooking? I mean, were you a good cook before then? I mean, you're used to putting things together,
Right.
ingredients.
Yeah, I was actually. I've always been fond of cooking. I definitely love to cook. I love to create stuff in the kitchen beyond like the meal of the moment. I've been making bread for like 15 years. I follow the Sullivan Street bakery recipe, which is you don't need the dough, and you get these huge, nice air pockets.
Nice.
You also have to let it ferment. Pickles, I've been making pickles for like at least 10 years, like my
Right.
own pickles.
Oh, so this was just
Yeah.
So there wasn't just suddenly you woke up and like, oh, I want to brew beer, but it kind of had an evolving
Yes.
role as an own.
That's like, when somebody knits or somebody flies model airplanes or whatever it is, like, that was my kind of craftiness, if you will, like, is to just do culinary stuff. And then the beer was a kind of natural progression. I love to drink beer. I love to try different kinds of beers. So let me make my own. And I also was thinking of like the apocalypse and the future, and what if like all hell breaks loose, and I'll still be able to make beer, and I'll sell flagons of
sustenance.
beer to people out in the woods
You'll be
like
a
Robin
hero.
Hood.
It's like Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, be the richest man on the pile of dirt right there.
That's great.
Hopefully it doesn't come to that for all our
No,
sakes.
but you know what? You use every little bit of initiative you can get stuck in your head. It's like it
It's
works.
true.
It helps.
So when did you like decide? All right, this is what I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go full scale.
So I was working at Morgan Stanley as a video producer, and I was kind of at the crossroads where I loved the work. It was fun work. I loved my team and the people I worked with together.
Right.
Bob, I worked with you on many occasions. There's nothing wrong with the work. I just felt as if I'm not creating anything that's my own anymore. When I used to do some side projects in video production, I would do stuff that I liked, and I would create my own projects. But now it was just really sort of defined in a way rigid. I mean, here's a video you need to make for a financial advisor or so-and-so, or it's about the markets, or it's a show that happens every Friday and it doesn't deviate from its formula except for, if the market's up or down or there's some bond to watch or whatever it is. So I kind of didn't want to do that anymore. And I wanted to do something new. And I also wanted to build a business to leave to my kids someday. And I was loved beer so much that I was like, I'm doing well at this at an amateur competition level. There are no breweries in White Plains. There's Captain Lawrence in Elmsford, Decadent Ales in Mamaroneck, and not much else. Yonkers, but right in the center, smack in the middle of Westchester, for 10 miles in a circle, I'm in the center of that circle now where I am.
Right.
Nice.
It's still that way. It's still that way. So let me ask you. So this is where things really get interesting. So you have this in your. How long were you percolating this in your mind, and then who was the first person you talked to about this? Was it your wife?
Yes. I started writing the business plan when she was pregnant with our second child, Branko, who's the warrior, and we were in. My wife loves temperatures that are very hot. I don't. like that much. So we went to Tulum, Mexico in August.
Sweet.
Whoa, yeah.
And she's pregnant like 6 months or 5 months with Branko. And I was like, poor little guy in their womb there must be dying. Like she's like sunbathing and like, I'm like, the baby's like baking.
Like 150 degrees.
Yeah, but he's turned out wonderful. It didn't affect him at all. And so at the middle of the day, from 1 to 4, it's just too damn hot.
Right.
So there's the siesta. So she would go upstairs with Vuk, who was like a little over a year old at the time, and they would do the siesta. And I took my laptop to the patio and had a beer and worked on the business plan. So we were down in Mexico for 10 days, and I think I wrote the business plan in 10 days.
Right.
And then I started doing research, and I put together a PowerPoint presentation for the Small Business Administration to like really pitch them like, hey, I've got my shit together,
Yeah.
and you should just give me the money so I can make this brewery. And they're like, okay, well, you should just co-sign your house. So then I did, and with my wife's blessing, of course. And I mean, there were a lot of pitfalls along the way. People tried to talk me out of it. People very close to me tried to talk me out of it.
I didn't try to talk you out of
No.
it. Did it? No.
Thank God.
No.
But
You wouldn't have listened anyway. Obviously, you didn't.
I didn't listen to
anybody.
anybody except my heart and my wife, who was like, "You got this," and we did.
Oh, so your wife was.
Oh,
so it wasn't. You
100%.
would. You didn't have to like twist her. arm
No,
or
she
anything.
was defending our decision or my decision and her blessing of it to the naysayers that we knew that.
Right.
And then I started to look for a place to do the brewery, and I found a wonderful spot on East Post Road, and it was I'd driven by it for years growing up, in White Plains. I was like, oh, this is such a cool arched window with the brick.
It's very just. I was
Yeah,
telling him
yeah.
you can't miss it. The arched window.
Yeah.
The brick arched window.
It's actually the biggest contiguous window with no pane in it in White Plains. It's 26 feet, 18 feet across. So it's an 18 feet wide piece of glass, and then it's 12 feet high, and it's in the arch.
And it's in the arch.
And there's no panes in it. So it's like, it's some
Wow.
kind of like, I mean, you can
Oh man.
jump on it and it doesn't break, thank
Nah.
God.
Yeah,
Knock
you're
on
dreading
I just
that
push
day.
on it to make sure it's
I
flexible.
know. You know the way we talk about it now. You knock on wood, and it's just like you go home tonight, and
I
somebody
always say-
Yeah.
drove right through it.
Jesus. Yeah.
But I mean, she's backing you, but there's the whole money thing. It's a leap,
It's huge.
so you were like, I don't know if you had. I don't need to get into your personal finances, but I assume you were trying to save a little money and try to launch this thing, and so what was the moment where you said, okay, I'm going to quit Morgan Stanley?
So I thankfully, my team, the folks that I worked with on a day-to-day basis were really understanding of if I had to run out at lunch and go to the construction site that was the brewery being put together.
I remember that time.
In the morning, I would be, before work, I would drive over and, take out a sledgehammer and, knock down walls that need to be knocked down to save money on demolition costs. I did all the demo myself.
Right.
And my co-brewer, Mark, who works with me now. We just went at that place for 2 months on off hours whenever we could with a sawzall, a crowbar, and a sledgehammer. And we got it gutted out and cleared out so that when the contractor was ready to do work and we had our building permits in hand, I had no money. I didn't have to spend anything on demolition except the dumpsters to take away what we,
Right.
broke
Yeah.
down.
It's a good way to get out
Yeah.
the stress too. Just start
Totally.
hitting stuff.
It worked great. Put tool on and just go down and smash things.
Perfect.
So you were doing both things at once for a while.
A long while. Yeah, it was really hard.
For about a year. How long were you doing that?
Yeah. So I signed the lease to the space in November 2017, and I got the ability to start doing demo in end of February of 2018, and construction started the first week in June 2018.
Okay.
So I had from March to June to get this place ripped open and tabula rasa, blank space, for the builder, Anthony, who's a great guy, and he brought us in under budget and on schedule. I mean, we built.
That's just like the rarest thing ever.
Yeah, that's because I was shepherding that through. I was like every day, Anthony, what do we need? Okay, we need a permit for this. All right, I'm on it. I'm going to the building department, and constantly like working the phone while driving, like all the time. Thankfully, I had the headset and all, but it's just a lot of juggling.
Yeah.
And then having the boys who are growing up and wanting more and more of my time and me wanting to give it to them and they can actually start playing soccer or basketball because they can dribble or they can do stuff because they're more capable. But I had less time for them sometimes than I wanted to. But I always tried to lead a good balance. And
Right. Well, they're going to, like you said, hopefully they like beer. If you're going to leave them.
But I worked up until we opened in January 2019. I worked full time until Thanksgiving 2018. So November, all I had was December and part of January before we opened that I was no longer working in television.
And you hit, I remember, but I don't know when this was in that whole scheme. You hit a brick wall with not a contractor but a supplier.
Yeah, it was really awful. So. Unfortunately, the craft beer industry right now is rife with people who want to take advantage of those who want to get in.
Yeah.
Be it a manufacturer of equipment, a lender, a business partner, whoever. There's a lot of folks out there, nefarious, shady people. And so unbeknownst to me, when I went to start looking at brewery equipment, I found a company that, had done good work in the past, but was so far behind their production schedule that I would have the brewery ready to be open and not have the equipment.
Right.
But they assured me, no, it's got, we're stamping the serial numbers on it, and I'll send you photographs. They sent me pictures of somebody else's stuff from 3 years ago, because they were so far behind. They just kept taking deposits with no intention of fulfilling the contracts. It actually was a fraud.
Yeah.
And I was one of 10 breweries or 17 breweries in 10 states that had lost their deposit, which for me was $58,000. I was the down payment.
And this was what piece of equipment was this?
The brewery itself, like the 3 kettles that you use to do what's called hot side, the brewing.
So they they were like, beginning to end manufacturing all your equipment.
They sold themselves as a made in America in the craft brew mecca of the country, Portland, Oregon. One-stop kind of shop, all U.S. welded steel, sourced in America, all that. And that meant something. I wanted to be like, I'm using, my own money and money from the taxpayer, the SBA, to start a business. The least I can do is buy American-made equipment, 100% American-made. And, also having the ability to have phone conversations with the guy who's in charge of fabricating this equipment meant something to me too, to be able to kind of really tweak things if I could and get what it wanted. And unfortunately, that person was is a fraud. And the case is now with the FBI. It's called interstate wire fraud. It's a serious felony, and they have all that they need from me, from evidence that I surrendered to them about this person.
You and 10 other people.
They nail him to the wall.
Yeah, you and 10 other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're in a club.
Yeah.
So you started that process with this person at what point? Because I remember you said in 2018 you started that.
Right, I did. As soon as I leased the space, I figured I probably should line up the equipment because it'll take some time to get built.
Yeah.
And so I had actually signed the contract and gave the deposit right after I found the space in November of 2017.
Right.
I sent the first check in December of 2017.
Yeah, I was wondering. That's a long time.
Yeah, and I didn't hear much going on into February of 2018, March of 2018. I figured, all right, I'm probably less than a year from opening. I need to, I need a lead time of 2 months to get ready with brewing beer and making beer to have on draft in time for the opening. Let me see what's up. So I went out to Oregon and I met the person and I went to the factory and everything to my eye. I'm not a welder. But I saw round steel being welded by the guys with the masks.
Yeah.
And,
What a production.
yeah, all that stuff. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, cool. This is legit. And
They probably had all you guys come in on the same day.
Well, it's like that's sort of what happened to me, if you remember my saga with when I got that engine built for my MR2.
Oh, my God. It was, a nightmare.
But it was the same thing. Like, this guy was super reputable for years, and I think, what usually happens is they get so much business they don't want to turn down, and they just let things spiral out of control, and then that's how you end up getting the guy becomes a criminal, like probably out of good intent, and then it turns into a disaster.
yeah.
And you can't sit there and say, no, I don't want to take business, but that's the responsible thing to do.
It is. It's totally a responsible thing to do. I mean, nowadays, we've had our beer in DeChico's and Whole Foods, in a lot of places, and currently it's just tough for me to produce enough because we're getting a lot of traffic at the brewery, thank God, and so I can't fulfill contracts anymore for like distribution. Maybe in the future. I mean, I definitely want to, but. I'm doing the right thing. I'm saying, guys, I can't right now. I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'll take, a couple $100 for a few cases of beer, and you'll get it next week, and I don't even have it, so I'm not going to deliver it.
Yeah. Oh no,
but thanks for the money.
Did I say next week? I meant next month. I meant the month after that.
Yeah. But anyway, to be continued on the saga out in Oregon.
And so you're probably not going to see that money.
That's what I've been told. I've been
Yeah.
told by. Law enforcement. Let's just generally say that it's probably been spent.
Yeah.
Or it was a rob Peter to pay Paul. Apparently,
Or
this
in that-
person was involved with some not so savory characters.
Yeah.
So
You probably owe some money. So, well, and so you definitely want to do more distribution. So are you going to be able to manufacture it there, or are you going to have to kind of farm that out, do you think?
Well, there's always the option, contract brewing, it's called, when you go to a brewery that has an extra fermenter or two or three or whatever.
Right.
And so they can, you brew with them or you give them the recipe, pay, and they brew. It's all different kinds of arrangements. But essentially, you produce your beer at their facility.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it's canned or kegged, and then you take it and you pay them for what their rate was for that. And it's your beer now to do with what you want. Bring it to your tap room and sell it, put it in cans and sell it into distribution. So I have thought about contract brewing. Right now, there's just got too many things going on with the physical space of the Wolf and Warrior itself.
Yeah.
But I would, if I could get another 2 fermenters that are double the size of the ones I have now, I could double batch popular beers like the Beskar Steel or Patagonia or B127 or any of the beers that we have that are that sell out in a week.
Yeah.
And I could double batch them. So instead of 25 cases or 50 cases, I'd have like 100 cases.
Yeah.
And then I could earmark a certain amount of that for. Sorry, I struck the mic. See, I know that's not good, so I'll say it again for the edit. Okay. Ready. So if I had more fermenters, I could make more beer, and then I could earmark some of it to go into distribution and feel good about that. So.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. It might be kind of a strange question. You have a physical space, so you have a bar, but you're not really a bar. I mean, what kind of issues have you ever been a bartender or done anything, worked in a bar? I mean,
Yeah, believe it or not, I was a bouncer.
Really? Oh, here it comes.
For a short-lived stint I went to Syracuse University.
Right.
And so there's Marshall Street, which is that's like the bar street and for the campus. And I was I managed to secure the side door bouncer job. So it wasn't like I'm the big guy at the front.
Yeah.
But I had to keep riffraff out from the side because there was an alleyway, then there was this door. And I remember the center for the Syracuse Orange football team came to the side door, and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "I'm coming in." I was like, "No, I can't let you in. I'm the bouncer." He's like, "What?" He grabbed me. I'm like, "Oh, all right, man."
Yeah. That's
it.
Yeah. You're like,
But
second guessing.
You're
this.
better about helping them throw them out. Yeah.
yeah. But I was never really a bartender. I bartended once for a summer at a country club, if you can call it bartending. I mean, it was just vodka cranberry, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Easy stuff, or pour a beer. But yeah,
But you don't have the issues like a bar does. I mean, this is a different. This is kind of a different arena.
Totally different. I mean, people don't come to a brewery really to like pick up somebody and get
Wasted.
Yeah, they're not looking to
wasted,
sit there and
yeah.
rip shots. And,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
grab
You're
ass.
not going to get somebody pounding shots. We've had some intoxicated people. We've had to, safely remove from the premises, but
Yeah.
it's very few and far between, thank God.
Yeah.
But no, for bartending, I mean, it's it's all about the beer, and we do a pretty good food menu too to back up the beer.
Right.
Awesome.
And you have a feature where you can go walk downstairs and look through the plate glass and kind of see the operation.
Yeah.
It's a big space down there.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. It's the same. It's actually a little bit of a bigger space, square footage wise, than upstairs is.
Right.
And it's believe it or not, in the beginning it felt huge, but now I'm like looking for places to stash pallets of cans, and because it take up a lot of space.
Yeah. Well, so we talked a little bit about the ribbons and things, but you're still into competitions, right? And that still kind of becomes a passion, and then it becomes a marketing thing.
Yeah, I mean, we entered 2 beers in the Great American Beer Festival. It was held virtually this year. We didn't win, unfortunately, but I was very proud of our New England IPA that we had submitted, B127. That actually passed the first round, and so it went on to keep competing, which is good because that category had something like several hundred entries. And
Yeah.
so, the first round is the biggest cut down, and then they get smaller as you go further in the competition. So I was pretty proud for our first year to, get through the first round in the mecca of the Stanley Cup of all beer competitions, really.
Right. That's great. That's great.
That's it. That's progress.
Second round playoffs.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we'll get the cup eventually.
So you would be classified as an entrepreneur. So if we're hearing some of your stories, what you went through, and you already said that some of the people there were very willing to take advantage of you. So what would be your advice to somebody who's coming up to you, like, 10 years younger than you, and saying, what are the top 1 or 2, 3 things that you would put in their ear?
The first thing I would say is never stop moving. Never give up, and never just sit idly and think like, oh, I can get to this next week, or I can do this another time if I'm tired or whatever. There is no tired.
Right.
There is no, I can put this off, because once you put your skin in the game, the clock is ticking to when you're going to lose everything.
Right.
And unless you get up and running, and that was key for me in the beginning, was we have to get up and running, and the beer has to be good. Because without those 2 things, we don't really have a reason to be a business there.
Right.
The other thing I would say is, be careful. I've done a lot of I've had a lot of mistakes in the first 2 years. When you hire people, you have to think. You don't look at the fact of like, is this person friendly with me or what, or do I like their sense of humor, or everything. All that matters really is, can they do the job, and can they do the job consistently,
Right.
And so I've found that there's people who talk a great game, and for a while maybe it works, it's starting to work out. You think, oh, this is going to be great, and I like seeing this person here, and they we have good conversation. Next thing you know, they abuse that.
Yeah, then they're taking
The
money
cracks
out of
start
the
to
drawer.
show. Yeah.
No, I mean that's a big problem too. I remember I grew up in a store, and we had very strict rules about how to operate. And you see things today like people eating sandwiches, or they're talking to one another. They never even look at you. I still make comments to people at a grocery store. I see some poor guy who's bored out of his mind, and I'll say, dude, if you just pick your head up and look at me and engage, your day is going to go by a lot faster. But he's just.
It's just a job.
It's just a job,
Yeah,
but it's
that's
important.
the problem.
That's a horrible job. But I said again, if you engage with people. But so is there a third thing?
Yeah. And a second part of that whole, like, be careful, with just who you work with, is also make sure to really read every contract you can so thoroughly, and also do your research on any companies you're going to be working with to procure materials or ingredients or whatever it is for your business, to make sure that that company or that person or that entity you're dealing with has an absolutely impeccable reputation.
Right.
Like, reputation matters. And how many other people can you talk to that have done business with this person or this group or this company, and they have good things to say about the experience?
Right.
That's absolutely key. I cannot stress that enough. Like, if I had, known a little better and started calling around to other breweries, like basically called the fabricator. I should have called the fabricator that I was getting the equipment with and say, listen, do me a favor, buddy. Can you tell me, give me the names and numbers of like 6 or 7 other places you've built gear for, then they're using it, so I can, just see how they like it and whatever. That would have been so much smarter to do, because I bet you he would have balked at it. In which case, you also, in the beginning, you're always going to be naive, and somebody might say, "Oh, well, I don't really keep contact with the people I worked with building their stuff." I don't know. Maybe you might be like, "Oh, okay." Well,
Yeah.
But and then I guess the third thing is never, ever, ever lose hope. Like, you have to be the eternal optimist,
Right,
with a reserve tank of optimism on the side.
Well, that's what I want to ask. How did you absorb this thing when you hit the wall with this guy who just suddenly you realize, I'm screwed here? And you're ready. You're ready to go.
We found out in September, and we were looking to open. I kept trying to open by the holidays in that same fall.
Right.
So it was awful. I remember we got the phone call from the law enforcement. My wife and kids and I were all in the car, literally leaving our driveway to go to Vermont for Labor Day weekend,
Right.
to our happy place in the Green Mountains, right?
Right.
And just relax and unplug before the school year, and the final push to open the Wolf and Warrior took place. And we get the call, and it's on speaker through the whole car. And my wife looks over at me, and her jaw drops, and I'm like, oh, my God. And after the call, we were just like, well, should we even take this little trip to Vermont? Like, this couple $100 or more, we need this now. And we're like, nope, let's go. And by the way, we're going to find another way to get equipment. And I was, the finances were just like grinding down to like, less than 10 grand left and less than 4 grand left.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, why save my IRA for retirement if I don't even know if I'm going to be alive? So let me just liquidate that. And throw it through, there's the money that we were missing, and also my father at that moment saw how far we'd come and how close we were here. The space is all finished being built out. We're ready to move the brewing equipment inside and start making the first beers.
Right.
Like, we're doing this. It's there. We've got it. But, oh, shoot, we don't have the brewing equipment anymore. So he stepped up and contributed a significant amount of that $50K that was lost, and I made the rest up, and we were able to get equipment from a super well-known company, Blickman Engineering, and it's a great system. And
1 year
thank
later,
God for them.
and then 1 year later, plus a couple months, COVID just.
Yeah, so
I mean, you must have sweat. That was the second
part
sweat,
two.
right? Part
totally.
two. Yeah,
we were. I remember it clear as day. We were gearing up to do the St. Patrick's Day. We had an Irish stout called the Dude from Dublin.
Right.
We were ready to rock. 10 kegs ready to go. I had already bought ridiculous poundage of corned beef. Like, we were just going to do corned beef and Dude from Dublin.
Right.
That was
Right.
St. Paddy's Day is a really great day. It's one of the top 5 days of the year money wise for a brewery.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Or bar for that matter, I should say. And so we get the call from the White Plains Business Improvement District, or it was an email saying sorry, we're going to be shutting down all bars and restaurants and non-essential businesses in White Plains, and New York State for that matter. Cuomo, I think it came from Albany, but it sucked because it was the day before Thanksgiving, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so 2 weeks went by, not even 2 weeks, 10 days or so. I was at home. My kids are now at home. My wife's not, she's a teacher. Now she's teaching remotely. The kids are learning remotely as best they can. It all kind of hit like a freight train, and the rent, was going to be due in 15 days, right? Happened in the middle of March. I was like, all right, we made the rent for April in the first half of March. What are we going to do going forward?
Right.
And, we basically pivoted to do the to-go business. The smartest thing I ever did in my whole entire life was buy a crowler machine so we could make cans behind the bar of beer we already had on draft. I bought that.
That's slick.
Yeah, I bought
That's
that
real
machine
slick.
like 9 months before COVID, and thank God we had that. It was a lifesaver. And then it became hard to source cans, so we're busy driving to New Jersey to find cans. Oh, I got a lead on cans in like Monmouth, New Jersey. All right, I'm there. Like,
Right.
buy as many as you can, load up the car, take the kids' car seats out, fill the back seat with just like cases of empty cans and lids,
Yeah.
Right.
And we kept it rolling, and that's when I started. I found out about a mobile canning unit, so they drive the machine to your brewery and can your beer, and then
Really?
even go to another one and do that.
Right.
So I had them come twice, Maltman, actually 3 times. We did a couple of canning runs. And then I actually bought a smaller version of the kind of system they have for the brewery through them. And now we can can at will.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So let me ask you, this is kind of like the high-low question. What was, we'll start on the low. Like, there must be a memory or a day where you're like, this is, really low. I don't know if that was the time you found out about the machinery or... So, I mean, was there a particular day, and how did you pull out of that?
I mean, that day was pretty low, although we thankfully we wound up in Vermont in a beautiful afternoon. We got to a hotel, and I'm just like sitting by the Battenkill River, which is in southern Vermont, Manchester, and just like thinking, all right, well, it's really, really, really sucks, and it's scary, but I have to push forward. There's no turning back.
Right.
We already have significant money invested into the physical space. I'm not going to like turn it now into like a comic book shop or whatever other passion I have.
Yeah.
It's going to be a brewery like it's supposed to be. And
Right,
you just
right.
have to make this happen. Every day since COVID hit really has also been stressful because I don't know what's going to be from one day to the next. I don't know if people are going to stop coming out of their houses or coming to the brewery, or maybe they might go back to just getting groceries and gas and like riding this thing out again. So all these days are definitely harder than I think they have to be, but it is what it is. We're here and we'll get through it.
Well, it sounds like we have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, a little bit. I mean, but you never know. I know people were going around in December or January of last year like, oh, 2020 is going to, I was number one saying it, 2020 is going to be a pivotal year, man. Like, I'm going to get my shit together.
Yeah.
And like,
It's going to be awesome.
Your shit's going in the basement. That's
Yeah,
what
it's
it's
like
going.
everybody's like scrambling for the basement. So what you have a memory of a particular high, like, wow, this is, now I'm tasting this, the real fruit of what I was going after.
Yeah, so several. I mean, there was one moment after, so we opened in January 2019, and I think, I don't know, it was one random night in May, late April, early May, and I was sitting by myself in the downstairs looking at the brewery, looking at the, everything, and that was in front of me and that I, built and worked so hard to get done, and I kind of like smiled to myself and like pinched myself. I'm like, holy cow! Like, we got it. We did this.
It was just a small moment.
I say the we because I'm like Gollum and Smeagol,
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking on the way over here that I probably should have asked you to bring your wife with you because she sounds like she was really a huge support.
Totally. Yelena is the best. Like, she gives me so much hope and also calms me down, and like we work through problems together that the business faces, and it's just, she's such a wonderful person and the greatest life partner I could ever ask for, like
Right.
the greatest wife I could ever want. And she should be here, but then the Wolf and Warrior would have to be here too. Because no babysitters during COVID either.
I was going to say, I actually was going to call you, and I said, nah, my son would kill me because things are complicated enough now. We're trying to
They'd be running.
We spent 3 hours trying to figure out what we're going to do with this table.
It's working so far.
It's working so far.
So far, it's a house of cards.
This
table might fall down.
Hold half
moment.
a gallon of beer. And,
Well, I was looking at a little bit of the history about the first brewery, and we're very close. We're only like 32 miles away from it. I mean, it was in 1632, according to what I was reading, in New Amsterdam, New York, on Brewery Street, which is now Stone Street.
No way.
That's what they said. That's what I was reading, and I read it in a couple places. So
very cool.
1632, and it was something about they wanted to keep their workers happy or something.
Yeah.
you know?
Were they Dutch? I mean, New Amsterdam.
Yeah, Dutch.
Yeah,
New
it's
Amsterdam
Dutch.
is totally Dutch, and it was all about the trade as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't realize it was started in New York. I had
Well,
no
it's
idea.
Like the culture comes right with it. I mean, that's like most beers that are, either even South American beers, Central American beers. They're all German.
Oh, right.
They're all German recipe beers. Like that's whenever they went and took over something, it was the breweries there.
Right.
And it also that keeps better than water. I mean, they traveled with it.
True.
It's life sustaining.
It's a more sanitary beverage in a lot of areas of the world than straight water, because it's been boiled, it's been fermented, it's got alcohol in it, and hops, which ward off little nasty bugs and bacteria. So
That's great.
Yeah, there's even in like Africa. There's a ton of them in the small breweries in Africa that all have old German or Dutch recipes.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Like you think about it, I think like Tecate, Corona, all those, they all have their roots in Europe.
Yeah, the Mexican lager, but the lager style comes from Germany. But now there's a distinct style called the Mexican lager.
Yeah. It all kind of grows from there.
I mean, the first time I started really, because when I was growing up as a teen, everybody wanted their beer super cold. And like we had a store. We sold Schlitz, which they say was the worst headache in the world. Blue Ribbon. I saw him drinking. He was.
PBR is great, man.
PBR is great.
I was like thinking PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon. That was like we were selling that. Like that was one of our chief sellers. You could not drink on premises where we were, but I forgot what I was trying to mention. But it was ice cold, and then I go to England. And I was never a big beer drinker. I've never been a big drinker, period. And then I started to drink the warm beer, and I didn't like it at first. And it took me about 3 or 4. But, I think most of the students over there used all their money pissing it down the toilet. They were just constantly in the pubs. And I began to realize why. It was just such a great community, and there was one on every corner. But I really could start tasting the beer because it was warm.
Right.
They just didn't freeze your mouth off. And I was like really enjoying it. And I really tied a few on down in England. So,
Oh, yeah.
So what's the difference between I keep saying micro beers and macro. I was reading something about a macro. I know the difference
I
in the
forget
terms.
the actual number. I think it's like either 50,000 or 300,000 barrels of beer annually.
Okay.
But macro or region or large regional, so macro would really be like Budweiser, Miller Coors, SAB Miller, InBev. Heineken is macro, of course, Corona. But micro, I forget the number. It's measured in number of barrels produced a year.
Right. Well, I was reading, this was 2018. It's a $114 billion market.
Craft or beer in general?
It says craft beer born in the United States keeps growing with this is 7,500 craft and macro breweries in the United States alone. And then it says, this as again, 2018, nearly 70,000 people are directly employed by breweries and 2.1 million jobs linked to brewing, like bartenders and distributors and stuff like that. So it's a huge. So have we, I guess it's still growing. We haven't reached. I guess we won't know, though. Everything, we're on pause now.
It's kind of hard. But people are drinking a lot at home, too, I've noticed.
Yeah, I know, so my girlfriend works manages like a liquor store, and all our friends work in distributors and all that. And I remember like the first 2 weeks of everything locking down, all our friends were like, "We just made our year's salary in like 3 days."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was like a derby on liquor and everything.
Well, you may have, all these people shut in. You may have a lot more competition now. So people are saying like, I think I'm going to make my own batch of beer here because I got nothing else to do.
Yeah, let them. I mean, seriously, the more the merrier. I think. I'm not worried about that.
So you guys you all get along, right? I mean, everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you have support.
Yeah, I think the craft beer community is a very friendly and tight knit. We're all in this together kind of community. To that end, there were some different beers throughout this 2020 that have come out of, a collective sense of let's brew this beer. Like for example, Other Half launched a beer called All Together.
Mm-hmm.
So the All Together IPA was their recipe. They open sourced it. They made the graphics and open sourced that as well.
Right.
They just ask that you donate what you can from the sale of that beer to your staff.
Right.
To your bartenders and your cooks and all that. So we did that, and there's another beer called Black is Beautiful that comes from Weathered Souls Brewing, and that's to draw attention to the Black Lives Matter movement and also to raise money for a scholarship for people of color in craft brewing.
Right.
And then there's another one called Curtain Up, which is to benefit a certain amount of the proceeds that breweries participating in this are going to be donating to I don't know if it's the Broadway Actors Guild or it's basically for all these out of work people who work on Broadway and stage.
That's a lot.
It's like a
lot of people,
gig
whole
economy.
industry. Yeah.
Well, there was one other question too, because you just brought it up, and I was thinking because like I said, I grew up in a store when I was 11 years old. I was a suburban kid, and it was a great life, but it was in the middle of nowhere, and so my schooling kind of went downhill. I remember I came to the 5th grade, and they pulled a map down of the world, and I knew where India was and all these places. They didn't know any of this, and I was a very popular kid with the girls for like 6 months, and then I got
and then they figured out who you were,
and then they figured out, and then I just got as dumb as everybody else, but it was such a great place to grow up. And I work side by side with my folks. So how is in the brewery business anyway, how do you incorporate your kids in this? I mean, they must be around all the time.
Oh, yeah.
They can be around too by law, right? They can be in the...
They're I'm responsible for them, but if I had other people's kids in the brewery, they'd have to sign a waiver of some kind. I waive all rights here or unknown in the universe for perpetuity. But no, my boys are really into it. They know hops. They know what hops look like. We grow hops in our backyard in White Plains, and so they know hops and they know I'm starting to try and teach them here and there what different kind of hops smell like. The grain, they know that the water and the barley have to be mashed together for an hour, and then they separate and just have the wort after that. They're constantly talking to me about my team, my employees, the staff at the Wolf and Warrior, like, oh, so how's Kate doing or whatever? They're into it. They'll draw pictures for the chef, and
that's great.
Yeah, they have a sense that this is their place. It bears their name.
Yeah, I think it's a different type of upbringing in the fact that I think when you work with your parents, there's a trust there that you don't necessarily maybe have when you like dad or mom get on a train. You don't know what the hell they do in New York City. I'm a lawyer, but that doesn't tell them much. But when you work with them, it was a great experience. I didn't give my parents a lot of hard times.
What was the store called?
It was Curtis. It was a country store. It was called Curtis General Store, and our byline was the biggest little store in Louisa County because it was chock full. It was like an artery that was choked. We sold everything. Yeah, it was a community store, but then that kind of started to change later.
So you had the Schlitz and the PBR, and then you also had balsa wood model airplanes and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, we had groceries, we had Carhartt was big because they started a power plant. We made a lot of money, and the workers would go 2 or 3 hours a morning and evening back and forth. Most of them were welders. So Carhartt and boots, Red Wing boots, and groceries and feed, cinder block. We sold everything. It was a general store.
Very cool.
But then later on, when people, like places like Walmart and Kmart in Charlottesville, people would go a little further away, and so the community store thing wasn't quite as big a deal. But I used to sit and watch. This is why I like asking people questions. I would sit and listen to people. Like the hunters would come in and talk and tell their stories. It was a great life. So I'm sure your kids are going to benefit a lot. So,
yeah, so far they're really loving it.
So, are we going to break some of this open, or are we just going to
I could, yeah.
I don't know.
They're more of a British serving
Yeah,
temperature,
yeah,
but yeah, sure.
I mean, so
And then I have
I've
an
been staring at it all
Oktoberfest
the
here.
time.
no, I mean we don't have to do that. But this is your latest.
Yeah, this is an Imperial IPA. It's almost a triple. It's not quite, so we can't call it a triple IPA. It's
What makes it a
9.2
triple?
ABV. The higher alcohol.
Okay.
So once you get to 10% and above, that's triple IPA.
Right.
This is a double IPA. It's a New England style, so it pours nice and hazy, really, really deep orange and gold color. And Beskar Steel, well, I love Star Wars. And so The Mandalorian is great, and it's a fantastic show, great character.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to call the beer like "This is the way,"
Right.
because that's what he says. But I looked it up on Untapped, and I found there's already like 14 "This is the ways." So his armor is made of Beskar steel. Beskar steel is badass. This beer is badass. So it'll be Beskar steel.
I like it.
That's good.
Favorite Star Wars movie, though, real quick.
So
Empire
you
Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So we can still come and come to your place and have a beer. I mean, for
Absolutely.
Now we have the 10 o'clock curfew now.
10 o'clock curfew, but you can come. We have every table, every chair. All the tables are more than 6 feet apart. So if you come there, you will not be sitting near anybody you don't come with.
Right.
We also have outdoor seating. We have a beer garden where I grow hops.
Nice.
The vines are still up for a little longer. They're mostly turning brown now, but it's a nice space. The brewery's downstairs. I do give tours if I'm around. I don't do it like at 3 o'clock. There's a tour.
Right.
If enough people are interested or strike up a good conversation with somebody, I'll be like, "Would you like to see the brewery?" And there it is.
Right.
But we're good for now. We'll hope it lasts.
You'll have some holiday specials and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll definitely put some information in your web page and everything.
Shameless plug, everything. Plug away, dude.
Absolutely.
Plug away.
Yeah. And
sure.
we'll work on our percentage later. Is there anything else that you want to contribute?
No, I mean we covered a lot of ground, guys. Definitely.
Yeah. No, it was great. I don't drink that much, and I go with him, and I'm like, just order for me.
Oh yeah, I know. And then it's always like, oh, is that going to be too much? Is that going to be too heavy? I'm like, am I out with mom right now?
Oh, I'm such a lightweight. I'm such a light. I'm not going to drink Guinness unless I'm in Ireland,
Yeah.
But
Guinness is actually not really a very highly caloric beer. It's pretty light.
Yeah.
It's got only about 95 calories or so.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty deceptive in terms of that.
It's just great to be in an Irish pub in Ireland. I mean, I can sit there and listen to them talk all day long.
Actually, we get I think my final closing note, I guess, is I went to Ireland with my grandfather who passed a while ago. But when I was 16, he and I went together.
Oh, that's great!
And I had my first real Guinness. My first Guinness ever was a real one in a pub in Dublin.
Oh,
there's nothing better than that.
And count on your grandfather to buy you your first beer when you're 5 years younger than the drinking age.
Yeah.
Although in Ireland, I think it was 18, so I was only 2 years off. But yeah,
it's acceptable.
Well, just the conversation there, I could just listen to the accent forever. It's just great conversation.
Totally.
And they're all local, and they're just happy. I mean, an American walks in, they're like, it's like a little surprise. But back when I was there, are you Irish mostly?
50%, like half Irish.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're that we covered
Yeah,
it
we
all.
covered a lot of ground.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
That's good. So we will we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for joining us, and I want to thank Shane for
Yes,
our
thank you, Shane.
station manager. Came
And thank you for coming in.
and thank you, Michael, for
My
coming in.
pleasure,
It's
guys.
great.
Honestly, I'm happy to be here, and
I've
Yeah,
love
that-
talking to you guys about the journey.
Yeah, I've admired you a long time because I think you really stuck your neck out there, and I saw you. I'm not a full timer there, but I saw you, and I could see the worry, and I could see, and then I remember when you hit the guardrail. That was
It
tough.
was rough. Yeah.
All right, so take care, and see you next time.